Welcome to Construction Champions Podcast, where we are burning the house down and rebuilding it twice a week. I'm your host, Rod Nussbaum, and I am here to help you become the champion that you're meant to be. Along with our amazing guests along the way, we will provide you with the resources, the latest and greatest. You will sit down with disruptors in the construction industry. And my goal from day one has always been to change the mindset around the construction industry. No more where we let the 3% of bad apes dictate the entire reputation of Construction Champions Podcast, where, as always, we're burning the damn house down. And that's every aspect of your life, your business, your personal relationships, you name it. We're going to talk about it on here so you can become that construction champion that you're meant to be, that I know you can be. As we close the year out, this starts to matter. Start getting your shit together for next year. We're here every Monday and every Thursday, and you guys don't just tune in for Ron Nussbaum. You tune in for all amazing guests. And today is no different. Tanner, it is great to have you here with us today.
Ron, thank you so much. I am ready to run through a wall now.
And there we go.
I'm ready to burn the house down too.
That's why I bring the energy, because that's what people want. They want some energy. It gets our listeners fired up. It gets you fired up. I'm just always ready to rock and roll, man. I'm always like, let's burn the house down, run through some walls, and do some amazing things.
Yeah, no, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, that's I'm gonna start every day listening to the intro to your podcast to get me fired up. But thanks for having us on. Thanks for having me on. We're super excited to talk about Construction Champions and what that means.
Awesome. Well, before we dive into that, why don't you introduce yourself to all the champions out there listening?
Yeah, for sure. My name's Tanner Dieterich. I born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, so somewhat of a unicorn these days, in a super high growth market. Really grew up my whole life playing soccer. That's kind of all I ever knew or wanted to be, and I actually was able to climb through the ranks a little bit and play throughout high school, throughout college, and then actually signed a professional contract for my hometown team here in Nashville. And I say all that to say that my background is not real estate. It's not technology. I like to say I'm the smartest dumb guy in the room, but it affords me the ability to look through everything with a super green and fresh lens. And so since retiring from playing, I joined Built Technologies, which I'm sure we'll dive into a lot deeper. I've held probably 4 to 5 different roles here at Built. And most recently, I'm diving into trying to fix the problems and the different challenges that different general contractors and owners and developers face in the construction ecosystem today through the lens of technology. So that's a little bit about me. Nothing too crazy, just out here, just trying to make the world a better place, get people fired up like you.
There we go. I mean, that's all we can do every day is just try to make the world a better place. And I love outside. So I don't come from the construction space. I originally, before I went to the Marine Corps, was in auto body. I played basketball, and when I got into the Marine Corps, I ended up in construction. So I used to say, like, I had a fresh perspective on this, that everybody I was working with had construction management degrees. I had a high school diploma and a tour to Iraq. I had a different perspective than they had. So I always love when we have people come on here that have a different perspective, that haven't spent the last 30 years in the construction space, and they're looking at it with a new lens. So I'm super excited for our conversation. I'm going to ask the $1 million question, and that is, what makes a construction champion?
Yeah, I love this question. First, I have to say thank you for your service. Appreciate all of that and everything you did for us. What makes a construction champion? I think for me and as we think about Built too, the construction champion embodies owning their subset of work through and through and everything that goes into it. And the way that I like to describe this is whether you're an individual who's on the job site and your responsibility is to estimate or to measure or to hammer a nail or to get an I-beam in or to make sure the finances are right, or you're in the back office somehow contributing to this project. Be an owner in a subset of your world as if you were the CEO of the company and whatever you're doing. And I think construction is one of the very unique industries and sectors that the impact of a single individual is magnified more so than any other industry. Our back office individuals play such a critical role in getting people paid and on time, and that's people's livelihoods that you're impacting, as well as those in the field who are actually building and constructing the environments, the cultures, and the fabrics of communities that we live, work, and play in. And so it's just for me, a construction champion, no matter where you sit on that, is just acting like an owner, which happens to be one of our guiding principles here at Built too. So we live and breathe it as well. But it's truly just owning everything that goes into your job, into your day, and trying to make it better, not only for you, but for everyone else in the ecosystem and everyone else that it touches. Um, it's kind of like that saying, like leave it in a better shape than what you got it in. That's kind of what comes to mind when I think about a construction champion.
I love it because it really is. We control as individuals in construction can be a very individual sport. At the end of the day, it's a team effort, but each phase is really an individual deal. And you have to come in, you have to own that. It's amazing. I was on a call last night where we were talking about this, where it was go write a business plan for your position. Like, even if you're not, or your department, like if you run a department, own it. How would you build that? How do you build that department? How do you take ownership over it? And it doesn't matter if you're a foreman, a crew guy, a field superintendent, the CFO, the office manager. There's ways that you can own that position.
Yeah. And I like to, I always tell people like those individuals oftentimes are the most valuable individuals in a company. And there's this thing called the keeper test where like if they were to ever get an offer, would you match it and keep them at all costs? And those individuals who act like they're subset of work and they own it, like you could go ask anyone and they'll be like 100%. Like I cannot afford to lose Ron. Ron is so valuable to our company. There's nothing that would ever let him leave. And even if you don't want to go and be a a CFO or C-suite executive or want to start your own company, you can still approach it and with that mentality. And the other thing too is I think for us at Built, we try to enable all of that to occur, right? So it's in all facets. So it's not just your work and where your hands are and the work that you're doing, but it's also how that's reconciled from a back office and a technology perspective to enable you to set up where you're disproportionately good at. And so I think for Built, we try and provide be another tool in the toolbox for different individuals in the owner and construction ecosystem to help enable them to add value where they're uniquely positioned to add value, as well as, create ROI and certain business kind of performance that helps drop to their bottom line or top line in any regard.
Awesome. So for owners, we got a lot of owners that listen to this show. They want to empower their people to have that. I hear it all the time. It's like, how do I get people to buy in that this just isn't my company? And that's what we're talking about here at the end. That's the compass of this is like getting people to take ownership of what they do and be a leader. There's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there that if you treat them really well, you give them what they want and you give them an opportunity, they will be loyal and lifelong employees, like you just said. But for the owners out there, how do you set those guys up to go out there and be able to take that ownership?
Yeah, I think for me, it's setting people up to do what they're uniquely able to add value in. Um, Ron, if you're not a soccer player, I would never put you on the field to play soccer, right? If you're a basketball player, I would put you on the court to play basketball, right? And so for owners, that's the perspective and that's the mentality they have to have. Every deal or development or project, think of it as starting its own business, right? I have to go hire a GC. Well, to do that, I need to pick the best GC for this particular project, for this particular deal. Is it heavy civil, commercial, affordable housing, whatever it may be? The same thing goes with, you know, your marketing, your administration, you know, all of the little bits and pieces that come together to make a deal really, really profitable.
Mm.
That's how you have to approach it every single day. And you just so happen to be, whether you're the development manager over that asset that's acting as kind of the CEO over this project, or you're the chief development officer that has, you're the CEO over multiple different, you know, projects. That's the mentality that you kind of have to have. And it all comes down to setting people up to add value in the way in which they're uniquely positioned to add value to that particular deal. And I think at times, on the owner side, we probably expect more from individuals, and then on the other side, we probably think we can do more than we're really positioned to do. So it takes some hard conversations and challenging each other, but I think, you know, we're not particularly scared to have those in construction and in the real estate industry. So once they're out there, it generally leads to a really positive outcome.
Yeah, well, it's definitely one of those industries where we just tend to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, happens. And a lot of,
As it should be, by the way. That's how every industry should be. You know, there should be no conversation left unsaid.
yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic attribute of the construction space. So how do you guys help guys track this kind of stuff? Like like what you're empowering somebody.
Yep.
How do you then validate that they're doing the stuff?
Yeah. So at Built, like I'll change it to Built's perspective here just to kind of help paint a bit better picture of what we do and where we sit in this whole ecosystem. You know, Built is really focused on the financial operations of the construction ecosystem. So all dollars flowing through a deal, both where it's coming from and who you're paying. So either way, we're going to help give oversight, visibility, and understanding to, including capital flow, funding, contracts, commitments, direct costs, you know, draw requests, pay application, lien waivers, compliance, all of these little bits and pieces that enable someone to get paid and for me to get money in the most efficient and effective way possible. Um, and so when we talk about that enabling stakeholders to do what they're uniquely positioned to good at, part of that is making sure all the boxes are checked in a very efficient manner where they can spend the majority of their amount of time on those things. I always say, like, a project manager probably isn't the most financial savvy person to be looking at an underwriting model and understanding, should this be our drive for this period or not, right? But we trust them to know what work has been put in place in the field and to approve an invoice. So how do I get them in the financial operations flow to only see that subset of information where they're in the software, they get their job done incredibly quickly, they keep the process in flow, it enables everyone to do their job more effectively while still adhering to project controls, compliance, and kind of making sure that capital is flowing efficiently. And so that's just like an example of little ways that you can enable people to set up to do where they're uniquely positioned to have value. And some of that answer may be, what are they not positioned to have value, and how can I take as much of that off of their plate as possible? Um, I don't know if that helps paint a picture, but that's kind
Yeah,
of
well, it actually pivots my conversation because it made me think of something. Because what you're talking about is a very fractured relationship in the construction space. When you start talking about the controller, the money side of things, and the field side of things, that relationship's very fractured. So what you're talking about is, how do we mend that relationship to where the office gets what they need, but the field doesn't feel like they're jumping through hoops for the suits?
yeah. I would love to get your opinion on the reason why you think why it's fractured. Obviously, I get to talk to developers and general contractors all day, every day, but just in your experience, maybe like what are some of the key reasons why it may feel fractured in the industry?
I think the main thing is the communication between the two. And not even between the two, the liaison, the ownership or the management or leadership, how they approach that relationship. Because you have two completely different personalities. You have the guys out in the field that just get shit done. That's what they want to do. You have the money side of it, that when you get into the CFOs and the controllers, they want the boxes checked. They want it right. down to the fraction of a cent. And the guys out in the field are like, well, what does it matter if I'm 2 pennies off if I finish the job a day early?
Yeah.
And the guys in the finance part are like, well, I don't care if you came in a day early. I want to know where my 2 cents are.
Yeah.
And we don't do a good job of creating a word where they can communicate or understand each other. Like, we don't say, this is why he wants to know where his 2 cents are. This is why he doesn't care about the 2 cents and he came in a day early. And like,
Yeah.
we don't facilitate that.
Yeah, you're head on, and you called it communication. Like for us at Built, we call it collaboration, right? And it could be for those in the field to the back office. It could be communication and collaboration between GC and owner, owner and sub, architect, whatever it may be. The reality is that historically, the way in which we have collaborated on deals and projects has been archaic. It has been incredibly labor intensive and manual, and it's intuitive and a nuanced industry, and you have to know what's happening. And everything is super important and super urgent all the time. So it's hard for me to know, is Ron's request, can it wait a day? Can it not wait a day? Because they're all coming in with like 10 exclamation points and red hot, and they need to be solved. And so inherently there's always these points of tension in everything that happens on a deal. And so I think for built, one of the things that we really focus on and try and harness is, how do I take and enable technology to move this along the process rather than being reliant on individuals or roles to ensure that everything is in good standing and happening. So let's just take an example of that. Is for me as a GC, if I want to submit a invoice to my owner, I should just have a really simple, intuitive platform that can meet me where I am. So whether I want an interactive experience that I can log into and submit my pay application, and it's going to auto generate the AIA format as well as the lien waiver, that should be an option for me. I should also be able to come in and drop a PDF packet. That should be an option for me. Or I just want to email it to you, Ron. Like, I don't want to deal with any of that. I just want to email it to you. And so at Built, we'll enable all three of those things to occur. But the more important piece to that is on the other side, for me as an owner, when I receive that, if you've inputted everything and you have it, I want it to show up super intuitive and easy. And if you've done all the work for me, then it will. Well, the other option is, if you just drop that PDF in, we actually have AI that can read and extract that. So rather than someone in the back office having to manually input data, slow them down, double check, triple check, we can extract all of the schedule of value information, all of the invoice data, all of the lien waiver and compliance documentation, and satisfy a lot of those at the upfront. So that now you're simply spending time satisfying requirements versus manually inputting a bunch of data. Or if you just drop me a PDF via email, we'll still pull that from the email into Built to a custom email inbox, and you'll be able to do the same things, right? So inherently, where there's this point of tension, I've now met the GC where they are while still solving the owner's core problems, which is manual, error-prone data entry, and in creating kind of, super long poles in the tent in regards to what needs to get this invoice approved and included in the draw. And so effectively what you're saying is, this collaboration component is adding value for each unique stakeholder that it touches within the process, and has some level of ROI on either side, such that I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, right? And then it relieves some of this tension in regards to, like, well, I don't want to do it this way, or I have Procore over here for all of these people, and I have email over here, and I have Built over here, and I don't want to log into 3 systems. And it's like, okay, do what you need to do to get your business done, and I will do what I need to do, and I will meet you where you are, and we can add value mutually on that journey. Now we've kind of gotten through some of the more mundane, boring, like, things that inherently add tension into relationships and enable technology to pick them up and kind of, substitute that. So now I can talk to you about how your kids are doing. How was the game on Saturday with little Timmy, and did he score 16 points like last week? The more important stuff in life. So that's kind of how I would think about it, and how I'd conceptualize it for people on this call. And I built one of our big things from the moment we started the company was this concept of collaboration. How do you provide a single sheet of music for all critical stakeholders in the ecosystem to participate in? And over the past 10 years, we've done an incredible amount of job of now extending that out to meet you where you are. So no matter how tech savvy, intuitive, how cumbersome things are, we're going to meet you where you're at to get the job done no matter what. So it's been a fun little journey, a fun little ride. But I will also say that this industry is shifting. Technology is definitely taking hold more so than I've ever seen before. So
Yeah, we're at a reflection or an inflection point in the construction space where it's still estimated 50 to 60% of companies don't use any technology, but I was just out at the International Builders Show, and what I heard the most was I don't use any technology, but I know I need to start, or else I'm not going to be able to win any jobs. So we're definitely at a time where you're seeing the mindset shift. You're seeing a lot of guys that are on their way out that are turning those companies over, and the people taking them over are like, how do I implement software to make this run a lot smoother immediately?
yeah, and I will say it's not only on the construction individuals, it's also on the technology companies. So if you take a step back and look at this industry as a whole, this is the second least digitized industry, just barely behind agriculture, which you could argue are the two that need technology the most. So it's not just a call to action for the construction companies to begin to evaluate, dive into this, but it's also for companies like Builds as we go on this journey with you guys is to be very pointed and specific on where we're actually adding value for you and if you're a good fit or not. So at Built, we always have this saying where we don't force fit software because it's not like software isn't the right solution for every business problem that you have. We solve a very specific problem set tied to how money moves in a construction project and in an overall deal. But that may not be your biggest problem. Your biggest problem may be time tracking and payroll, or it may be estimating, or it may be, 3D drawings and bill of materials aggregation and whatnot. And so I think the equal and ample sides of this is as technology companies, we need to be very specific on where we're actually solving problems. And as individuals in the construction ecosystem, understand what the most important priorities that you're trying to solve are. And I think, you'll see over time as you get more and more specific with the problem you're trying to solve, the more and more that you're going to start getting value from technology versus just like random softwares here and there that you're trying to, build and add into your tech stack. So,
Hey, I absolutely agree with that. Being a guy that came from the construction industry and then developed software for the construction industry, one of the reasons I did that is because I wasn't happy with what was being developed for the construction industry. There wasn't, I felt like there was a disservice being done. People were creating software for construction because they saw there's a big TAM, there's a big market to go after, and what they did was they really jaded a lot of people on construction software. The early adapters that started using stuff that wasn't made for construction that they tried to retrofit into our industry, it it created this tension between the two in an industry that's already not known for the best tech adaptation. But I argue that point to today is that we're inherently early adapters. We like new things. It's why you go look on the back of these trucks and we have the latest, greatest toys, the newest stuff.
yeah.
There's just a tension that was created between software and construction. I like to say Silicon Valley in construction to start with, that now we're finally seeing the shift turn away from that to where the trust is starting to be regained and you're seeing guys implement software into their business.
Yeah. 100%. And I'll give you just a quick, like some data to support this, right? So if you look at payments, as an example, so in the consumer world, about 4% of payments are written via check. So not that many. 4 out of 10 is not that great. And I would say not many of us have ever opened up a checkbook before. And if we are, it's for permits and fees, right? To bring it back to construction. Um, the in the construction ecosystem, 76% of payments are still funded via check, right? And I don't think it's because there is a non-willingness to pay in some digital payment method. I think it's because no payment method has ever met their needs, right? And so that's an example of something that we're diving deep into, and have started to dive super deep into, where no matter how you pay someone, whether it still is via check or ACH, or, you want a discount, or you want to do any creative method to get people paid, or wire, um, we should have an opportunity for you via technology to enable that payment to occur. It's safer, it's more reliable, it's more secure, and people get their money a hell of a lot faster. And that creates really, really mutually beneficial outcomes. So again, like, as an industry, if you look at that stat and you're like 76%, they're in the Stone Age. Well, yeah, but like there largely hasn't been any construction specific payment platforms that have solution to be able to give Ron an opportunity to even adopt digital payments, right? So um not to mention all the nuances and complexities once you even get outside of the payment tied to the project and the invoice. So it's like that's kind of what we're talking about, where we're not everyone needs this solution. I think a lot of people need some form of digital payment method as we kind of venture into this new world. Um, but that's an example where we're going to go super deep on that. We're going to really, really listen to customers, solve their problems, identify ways to help innovate and create simpler, more intuitive solutions that meet the demands of both the person paying someone as well as someone accepting their money, to create mutually beneficial outcomes that releases some of that tension and some of that like inherent complexity that enters every single construction project when you're in the field. And so, yeah, that's kind of that example of what I would say. And the other thing I would urge people in all of this is don't try and be don't try and solve 100% of your needs 100% of the time. Like in this industry, 50, 60, 70, 80% there is really, really meaningful. And you have no clue what it'll do to your business. And I've gotten to see it firsthand on people that have begun to adopt certain components of Built. Um, it's still incredibly, incredibly valuable. Maybe it doesn't solve 100% of the things that you set down and wanted to solve in the year, but man, let me tell you, like, you're gonna be a different company. You're gonna have a different fabric, a different culture. Employees are gonna be happier. Subs and different trades and partners are gonna be happier. And it fundamentally shifts the mindset of how you approach problems now, even once you kind of get the momentum. Once the domino falls, it starts to be a lot more fun than, these multi-year journey, like accounting migrations. We're not that. Like, this is like a 30-day thing that we can get implemented where you're seeing value. So it's like that's what people send their mind to. And I think that there's a lot more out there that we can start testing and putting into our businesses.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. For everybody out there listening, if they wanted to connect with you, follow you, learn more about what you do, where's the best places for them to do that?
Yeah, www.getbuilt.com is number one. We're on all social profiles too. So if you just search Built, we'll pop up. And if you're looking for me personally, Tanner Dietrich, the name will be in the bio, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, message me, or if you want to shoot me an email or whatever, just feel free.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for taking the time and being on the show today.
Yeah, Ron, really appreciate you. Thanks for what you do.
Awesome. All right, construction champions, another episode in the bag where we dived into all kinds of stuff, from empowering your guys, your girls, anybody in your company to take ownership. Like, what do we dream of? It's getting people willing to take ownership for what they're doing. And then we talked about collaboration and what does that look like? What does it like? We do not have a good time, not a good time. Let's say we do not have a good reputation of facilitating collaboration in the construction space. Because like Tanner said at one point in times, we just speak our mind. It just happens. If there's a problem, we talk about it. And a lot of times that can cause more issues than it can actually cause good stuff. So empower your people and then figure out how you can track that. How can you make it easy? Go check out what they're doing at Built. I love when they talk about meeting you where you are with the technology and how that works. Just think about it. One of the hardest parts of adapting technology is having to change our behaviors or change how you do something. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe it can meet you where you're at.